Hello, hello, Mr. Low Key here. We are back for the third live stream. My equipment is working. I got my mic, I got my sound, and I've got a very juicy topic I'd like to talk about. It's been a bit tricky live streaming more often and really having to prepare and have a plan. Okay, I'm going to look this way. I think that looks better. Really having to prepare and have a plan about what to chat about. But a topic that really resonates with me that I want to talk about today is addiction, depression, and obsession. I think these three words are very related. And the reason why I say this is in my own personal life, I've been quite aware of those three. And at the root of the issue is usually something that occurred in your childhood. And from last year, just being in the lockdown, it was a very important time for introspection. And I was having a lot of flashbacks of different things that happened in my life. And I was wondering, why is it when my mind is quiet, it keeps going back to these specific memories? What happened? And these are memories that really shape you and build a lot of your habits that you have later on in your life, a lot of your character, a lot of your perceptions, and a lot of your feelings. And some could argue even logic too. And as I've been consuming more content about this, my understanding has also changed slightly. So after all that input, I'm now going to give you a little bit of output, and I'd love to discuss it because discussing ideas with different perspectives helps me learn more and see things in a way I might not have. And I say all this to say addiction, depression, and obsession. I've had all three. And let's start with addiction. And it's such a taboo word, but it is still such a human thing. And thank goodness it wasn't a drug addiction. I don't smoke and I don't drink. And it's such a tricky thing why I don't do either. It's because deep down I always knew I was an addict waiting to happen. It's a bit of a weird thing to say, but I come from a family who have very addictive personalities, and I've got a very addictive personality. When I find something I like, I generally go overboard with it, all the way in and then some. And some could call that being passionate, but I see it more as an addiction. And it really made me think, what is at the root of this addiction? And usually it's something or a combination of events or relationships that happened in your childhood. And I felt it so strongly during the lockdown because I was looking back to a lot of particular moments I had, and again, toxic relationships, and a lot of partners who I can't even say dated, but attempted to date, or if I say I pursued, romantic interests I pursued. Now that I look back, were in fact toxic. And toxic is also such a hot, popular word these days. So many things are called toxic. This is toxic, that's toxic. And what is toxicity? Toxicity, and why is it so alluring? And I think in life, almost everything can potentially be toxic if it has certain things in excess or a lack thereof of something. For example, let's say I was going to eat a sandwich and I got a loaf of bread, fresh loaf of bread, delicious and just amazing. This is healthy. However, though, let's say I don't store that bread correctly and I give it a month or two and it grows a fungus. And if I was to eat that, moldy bread, I'd get sick. This thing that's supposed to be a good thing has now become toxic. And what if I didn't have the ability to tell the difference between a fresh loaf of bread and a moldy loaf of bread? Let's say I've just gone through life never knowing the difference. That's is what it felt like going through life pursuing women who were toxic. You're hungry, you're starving, you really want a sandwich, but then you eat it and you get really, really sick. And the smell is a bit off and the texture is slightly off. But you don't have the ability to see that, wait a minute, this isn't a fresh loaf of bread, this is a moldy loaf of bread. It had the potential to be good, but for whatever reason, it was stored incorrectly and it's become moldy and bad. And a lot of the romantic interests I pursued had that. Now, these patterns of behavior were very similar to having an addiction. And it really all started clicking how addiction, depression, and obsession are very, very linked. So breaking an addiction is so tough because eventually when you realize there's a difference between a fresh sandwich and a moldy one, you're still hungry though. And what if all you have on offer around you are moldy sandwiches? You start to think all food is supposed to be moldy and makes you slick slightly. You learn to tolerate things that are bad for you. And you build a bigger tolerance each time. And you start eating moldier and moldier bread. More toxic, even worse. And you just learn to accept things that are wrong. And another reason why is deep down, you are unfulfilled in a certain way, whether it's certain love you didn't receive in your childhood, certain wrongs that were done to you, or a certain trauma that leaves you incomplete. It leaves you broken. It leaves you hungry. And maybe these moldy sandwiches are the only thing that comes close to being a substitute for the thing that you really wanted. And I'm using this analogy because a lot of the time, a lot of the toxic relationships I pursued, I played a major part in it. I shouldn't have been playing that game. I would date women who had zero interest in me, who were very manipulative, and they'll draw me in time and time again. And I'd fall for it because deep down, desperately, I wanted to be validated by what I thought on the outside was a physically attractive woman. And I thought, oh, maybe she can give me the love and adoration and appreciation that I never got when I was a kid. And when you meet somebody with this narcissistic personality disorder, and I spoke about this very in detail with Black Light Revelations, that podcast is also on my channel. And something profound that he said was, we're all on a spectrum of narcissism. Now, there's a healthy type of narcissism that you can have, but just like a sandwich, you can kind of get moldy and go into the wrong. And people who are very, very drawn to narcissists themselves are also on the other side of the spectrum. And they get attracted to very, very toxic people. And that's the trap I fell into multiple times. And not knowing what red flags were, and not knowing how to stand up for myself, never having that locus of control in my life, that feeling of being powerless when something that you wanted. And I thought maybe I'll just simp out, I'll try my best. And time again, it was always the same end result. I'd end up feeling used. And then that addiction then created another addiction. So I'd look for validation in objects. I'd go shopping, or I'd try exercise, or, I'd try find a new addiction to fulfill that need for validation that I never got. And this only finally broke when I found a way to feel validated in a way that wasn't toxic. And suddenly all my other addictions fell away. And when I felt so complete doing something normal and feeling validated, I was like, oh, you mean I don't have to be feeling like trash when I'm dating someone? Oh, I don't have to be feeling used after being with someone? And that really caused a massive epiphany that I had never had before. And it made me start getting rid of people, actually, who I realized were never really into me or liked me. They were simply just using me. And it almost felt like being used was normal until I met somebody who wasn't using me. And I realized how now I had to protect that feeling. And I keep liking this analogy of food. So once you've tasted fresh bread, you want to throw away all the moldy bread you have. You're like, why was I eating moldy bread all this time? And once I went through that, I realized the next thing: obsession. Obsession is what you're supposed to have the entire time. An obsession with quality, an obsession with perfection, an obsession with protecting your mental space. Obsession helps prevent addiction. I'm going to repeat that. Obsession helps prevent addiction. If you are obsessed about getting things that are good for you, let's say 80%, you're obsessed with making 80% of your life healthy and positive, then you have got 20% to play around with. I think that's normal. I won't say 100%, but let's say 80%. 80% obsessed with structuring your life in a way that is efficient, effective, getting rid of things that get in the way of that. And once you find that, you'll find a lot of other addictions you have sort of just fall away. Having an abundance of free time and an idle mind that's wandering, when you have an obsession in your life, that's no longer in the way. You're either working out, or you're growing, or you're finding new things. Oh, 95 Phantom, that's 3 topics. They're all related. The addiction, depression, and obsession are all part of the spectrum in where you find yourself. Have you ever found yourself in any of those 3? Do you have something you're addicted to, depressed about, or obsessed with? Please let me know. I'd love to discuss it. Because I found most of the toxic relationships I fell into, they were all either due to an addiction or a depression I was having, or an obsession I need to have. And when you've got the right sort of obsession in your life, you start to attract other people with a similar obsession. I want to be healthy. I want to be positive. I want to be productive. When you're obsessed with those things, you don't have time for addictions. And an obsession really completes you in a way. And I find the only way to break an addiction, because the reason why people even get addicted to something is because there's something that's missing that the addiction tries to fill you with. So if someone is an alcoholic, to tell them just to stop drinking rarely works. There's a reason why they drink. They drink to fill a void that they're not getting in their life. A lack of happiness, nothing to generate dopamine, nothing to generate serotonin. The reason why people hang out with toxic friends is because deep down, those toxic friends fill temporarily, and in a very expensive way, toxic friends fill a need for validation, a need for self-worth, even though they do it through manipulation and so many other things. But that's, to my understanding now, that's how an addiction works. You can't just break an addiction by, okay, I'm going to decide to stop. You have to replace it with something. You have to put another placeholder to hold you up. So whether drugs, whether alcohol, whether smoking, if you eat a crappy diet, if you aren't obsessed about having a good diet, then you get addicted to things like fast food. To cigarettes. Why is smoking so addictive? It's not because it's fun to put something in your mouth. It's because of the nicotine. And if you don't get your dose of nicotine, why is somebody addicted to nicotine? Well, It's because maybe they're trying to, they're not eating the right diet, so now they're trying to lose weight, or inside they don't feel charged up. They don't feel that buzz from anything else. So then people get addicted to smoking because the smoking lifts them up, because inside they're not feeling that zest for life. So you need to have an obsession. You need to be exercising. You need to be loving it, really feeling growth and something that you can lose yourself into. Because I feel deep down, as human beings, we're supposed to be lost and obsessed with something. Well, okay, well, some of us. I know I'm supposed to have either an obsessive personality or an addictive personality. There's no in between. And my obsession now is streaming and podcasting. And I find when I've got something like that, I don't have an idle mind. And it makes me have to look into things like, childhood trauma, stuff you need to forgive, arguments you've had that were never resolved, grudges you're holding on to, so many things you never learned. Now I have to become obsessed with learning them and talk about them on a stream. And it's a beautiful thing. It's we can call it growing up. We can call it self-discovery, self-actualization. If you love your Nietzsche, or if you love your any popular psychologists, if you love your Jungian, your Carl Jung, if you love any of those things, I think it's what it's all about. And yeah, I'm getting more practice talking about it, especially now on streams. But I feel it's something that's greatly enriched my life and something meaningful that I really want to talk about with others. And for anyone else going through in a major rut, deep down it's your body and your mind and your soul trying to tell you something is off. There's a need that you do not have fulfilled. It is a hunger. It is a thirst. And some people can say, no, just ignore it. You can't ignore it. It's like being hungry and telling somebody, no, just ignore the hunger and it'll go away. No, it needs to be filled. It is a nutrient that you desperately need. And you're either going to fill it with an addiction or an obsession. Those are the only two that'll work. And just talking more about the depression side of it, deep down, I feel depression is a lot like hunger, or it's like sunburn. You deep down, something is wrong. You feel lethargic. You feel hurt by something. You feel down. And when I've been most depressed at certain times, it was either a toxic job I had, or a toxic friend, or a toxic relationship, some sort, having no meaning to something I was doing, having no real contribution to society, having no real growth, feeling stagnant, feeling trapped. And whenever I've broken out of situations like that, the joy I've felt and happiness, and I really acknowledged it in myself to be grateful, be thankful, and take note of things that make you happy, and treasure your happiness, protect it, become obsessed about it, become obsessed by keeping things around you that make you happy, and never wasting your life. Life is a brief and precious thing. And I've seen now that myself growing, myself learning, myself having valuable friendships, family members, moments in time, I really treasure and capture them and really protect them. And I've seen to really avoid things that, really consume my happiness. That's also been something where I've just been like, yeah, you know what? This could seem like a good idea, but deep down, I know it's not going to happen. And I seriously cut down on the nightlife. I cut down on people who I saw are energy vampires, if I could call it that. And it was hard in the beginning because finding something to replace those things, those toxic things, was tough. And I just want to say it's not impossible. I've done it. And I'm here. I'm here. I'm the proof. And there's so much proof around us of, you know, that there's better to life. Life can be better every single day. Life doesn't have to be this constant battle. Life can be something great. And yeah, I just had to share that with the world. I want to thank you, 95 Phantom, for tuning in. Live streaming is something I'm hoping to do more and more of. And I really want to talk more about introspection and ways to just live a higher life. Let's all exercise more, learn more, read more, grow more this year, and let's really win. Let's invest more. Let's live life to its fullest. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Mr. Loki signing out. Bye bye.